Sophie changed the locks 3 times. He still got back in. The police told her it was a civil matter. The landlord said his hands were tied. And meanwhile, this man was sleeping on her sofa, eating her food, and refusing to pay a single penny in rent. This is Sophie's story about James, the roommate from hell, and how it took 8 months to finally get rid of him. Sophie was 26, working in marketing in Bristol, and like most people her age, she was paying an absolutely ridiculous amount for a 2-bedroom apartment. When her previous roommate moved out to live with her boyfriend, Sophie was suddenly staring down £1,400 a month on her own. Impossible on her salary. She posted everywhere, spare room, Facebook groups, you name it. And that's when James messaged her. His profile looked fine, 28 years old, works in IT, clean, quiet, non-smoker. She checked his references. His previous landlord said he was no trouble at all. She should have asked why they worded it that way. The viewing was, well, okay. James was a bit awkward, wouldn't really look Sophie in the eye, kept asking weird questions about the broadband speed and whether she was home much. But Bristol's rental market is brutal. She needed someone who could pay half the rent, and James said he could move in immediately. First red flag? He wanted to pay cash, said his bank account was being sorted after moving back from abroad. Sophie hesitated, but he offered 2 months up front, cash, in hand. She said yes. He moved in on a Saturday, just 2 suitcases and a laptop, so the rest of his stuff was in storage. For the first week, everything seemed fine. Well, almost fine. James worked from home. A lot, like never seen to leave the apartment. Sophie would come home from the office and he'd be there. She'd leave for a morning run, he'd be there. Weekend, there. But he paid rent, he was quiet, he cleaned up after himself, and then month 2 started. Sophie came home one Tuesday evening and James was cooking in the kitchen. Not unusual, except he was cooking her chicken, the one she'd specifically bought for her meal prep that week. "Oh, sorry," he said, not looking sorry at all. "Thought it was communal, I'll replace it." He never did. Then it was her milk, her bread, her eggs, always with the same excuse. Thought it was communal, or "I'll get you back." So Sophie started labelling her food. Passive-aggressive? Maybe. But it worked. For about 3 days. Then she found him eating her labelled yoghurt. "Oh, I didn't see the label," he just shrugged. She bought a mini-fridge for her room. Problem solved, right? Wrong. Because the third thing was just the beginning. Month 3, rent was due. Sophie paid her half to the landlord, as always. James said he'd transfer it tomorrow. Tomorrow came, no payment. "Sorry, bank issues. Definitely by Friday." Friday, nothing. Sophie messaged the landlord. Had James paid his half? No, not a penny. She confronted him. James got all defensive, said he'd lost his job but had interviews lined up, just needed 2 weeks. He'd pay double next month, promise. Sophie felt bad for him. 2 weeks, she could manage that. 2 weeks became 4, 4 became 8, and here's where it gets worse. Sophie called the landlord, explained everything. "You need to evict him," she said. He laughed, actually laughed. "You let him move in. You're both on the tenancy agreement as joint tenants. If I evict him, I have to evict you too. This is between you two now." Wait, what? Turns out, when Sophie had added James to the tenancy, she'd made them joint tenants, meaning legally they had equal rights. The landlord couldn't kick out just James. It was all or nothing. Sophie was trapped. Month 5. James hadn't paid rent in 3 months. Sophie was covering the entire £1,400 herself, draining her savings. She told him he had to leave. Time's up. Enough. James looked at her, completely calm, and said 2 words. "Make me." Sophie didn't know what to do. She called the police non-emergency line. The operator was sympathetic but very clear. This is a civil matter. We can't forcibly remove him. You need to go through the courts. The courts? That could take months, cost hundreds, maybe thousands in legal fees. So Sophie tried a different approach. She'd make living there so uncomfortable that James would want to leave. She changed the Wi-Fi password. He just used his phone's hotspot. She stopped buying toilet paper. He stole hers from her bedroom. She had friends over constantly making noise. James didn't care, just stayed in his room. Nothing worked. She even tried changing the locks. Twice. The first time, James called the landlord and complained he couldn't get in. The landlord, believing they were joint tenants with equal rights, gave James a new key. The second time, Sophie didn't tell anyone. She just changed them. James somehow got a locksmith to let him in, claiming he'd lost his keys. He was back inside within hours. The third time, she changed the locks and James broke a window to climb in. Then he charged her half the repair cost, saying she'd made the flat insecure. Sophie realised she couldn't lock him out. The law wouldn't let her, the landlord wouldn't help her, and James knew it. Month 6. Sophie woke up at 2 a.m. to use the bathroom. James's door was open. The light was on. She glanced in as she walked past. He was sitting at his desk, multiple monitors, and on the screens, her social media, her Facebook, her Instagram. He was just scrolling through her photos. "What are you doing?" she asked. She was terrified. He spun around. "Research, for work. That's my Instagram. Your privacy settings are rubbish. Not my fault, it's public." He wasn't technically breaking any laws, but Sophie felt violated. She changed all her passwords that night, made everything private. Then she noticed her mail was being opened. Letters addressed to her, clearly already unsealed when she got to them. "Oh, those were on the floor," James said. "Thought they might be important." She started getting her mail sent to her parents' house. Month 7. Sophie was done. Completely done. She contacted a solicitor. The news wasn't good. To legally evict James, she'd need to serve him a Section 21 notice. But she wasn't the landlord, so she couldn't. She'd need to get a court order, £300 plus, and 2 to 3 months minimum. Then wait for bailiffs, another month, another £200. Or, the solicitor said, she could offer him cash to leave. Cash for keys, he called it. Sophie wanted to scream. Pay him after everything he'd done, after he'd stolen from her, invaded her privacy, refused to pay a penny in rent. But she was desperate. She offered him £500 to leave by the end of the week. James smiled, actually smiled at her. "Make it £1,200 and I'll be gone tomorrow." Sophie didn't have £1,200 to give him. She'd already spent thousands covering his rent. But then she remembered something. James had paid 2 months' rent up front, in cash, right at the very beginning. She went to her room, found the tenancy agreement, and actually read it properly for the first time. There was a clause about deposits and advance payments. She called the landlord. "James paid you 2 months' rent up front, right, in cash?" "Yeah, why?" "He hasn't paid rent in 4 months. Technically, you owe him nothing. He's already in arrears. And actually, he owes me money too, for utilities, food, everything else." The landlord paused. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you tell him that if he doesn't leave immediately, you'll take him to small claims court for the 4 months of unpaid rent. That's nearly £3,000 he owes, and I'll file a separate claim for everything else." It was a bluff, sort of, but the landlord agreed to make the call. 20 minutes later, Sophie's phone rang. It was James. "I'll be out by Sunday," he said quietly. "Tomorrow," Sophie replied, "or we file on Monday morning." Saturday morning, 11 a.m., Sophie watched from her bedroom window as James carried his 2 suitcases down the stairs. He didn't say goodbye, just got in a car, someone was waiting for him, and he drove off. Sophie immediately changed the locks. Then she went through every single room. He'd left nothing behind except one thing, a single sticky note on the kitchen counter. It said, "Good luck finding another roommate." She stuck it on her fridge as a reminder. Sophie lives alone now. She pays the full rent herself. She works extra freelance projects to afford it. And honestly, she says it's worth every single penny. She never found out where James went. His social media disappeared. His phone number stopped working. Part of me wonders if he's doing this to someone else right now. But here's the thing. Sophie did everything right. She checked references, she had a proper contract, she followed all the rules, and she still ended up in this nightmare. It still took her 8 months and thousands of pounds to get rid of someone who should never have been there in the first place. So if there's any lesson here, it's this. Joint tenancies are dangerous. If you're adding a roommate, make sure you're the main tenant and they're a subtenant. It gives you actual power if things go wrong. And maybe, just maybe, trust your gut. If someone seems to be off at the viewing, they probably are. If you've got your own nightmare roommate story, I want to hear it. There's a link in the description where you can submit your story. Next week, I'll be telling you about the neighbour who called the council on someone 47 times in 6 months. And trust me, the reason why is absolutely bizarre. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for listening, and seriously, good luck out there. The rental market is absolutely brutal.